All right, here we go. So I have been wanting to start a podcast for a long fucking time. Long time. I love talking to people. I love learning about people. It has just been an area of excitement for me, and I knew I wanted to start it. I already had the name. Getting Naked with Kai came to me several months ago, and I knew I wanted to start with myself, getting naked with myself. And it's been on my list for several days to record the first episode. And it did not feel right until today. And I'll go into later on why today felt right. Um, Something really important and intense happened to me today that connected a lot of dots, and I'm going to open up about it on this episode. So, welcome to Getting Naked with Kai, episode 1. I'm your guest, Kai, getting naked with himself, myself. Um, my intention with the podcast is to connect with amazing humans, to learn people's stories, to shout out amazing humans, creative, special, unique people that have beautiful energy, beautiful medicine for the world. And I really enjoy talking and having deep conversations. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And um, yeah, I just want to start. I just want to start. Um, I'll start with my story. Basically, so I'm 33 years old, going to turn 34 in about a month. Basically, for 31 years, or most of the 31 years, I lived very much controlled, enveloped by shame. And I spent the better part of my adult life basically from 19 until 31, for the most part, extremely addicted to pornography, to video games, to energy drinks, to many, many things. None of them were hard drugs, but they were all the same mechanism, which is avoiding myself and not wanting to be with myself, not wanting to experience what it feels like to be in my body. And those are things that I'm still working through right now. It's almost like my life just started very recently. At age 31, like when COVID started, I was in a relationship. That relationship ended, and at the beginning of 2021, it really feels like that's when I quote unquote like woke up. I had my first experience of peering through the veil. And as a kid, I was very expressive and curious, but I really lost touch with that. And like I said, most of my 20s were numbing and seeking pleasure through external stimulation. And so I sat with mushrooms when I was 31, beginning of the year in Utah, and that was my first look truly beyond the veil. I had had a couple psychedelic experiences in my mid-20s, but I didn't have the awareness or any sense of community or any way to really understand what had happened. So in many ways, it feels like when I was 31 in Utah in January, it was my first like, oh shit, there's way more to life than I've been experiencing. And I saw the Lion King scene where he says, "Remember who you are." And I had this awareness of like, wow, I'm way bigger than I think I have been, than I've been living essentially. And went back to the studio where I was living, and I packed up everything into my Honda Civic, and decided to move to St. George, Utah, which is where I had had that experience. Stopped at a bunch of national parks on the way, lived in St. George for a few months. I didn't really have a huge plan. I took out my college fund, stayed there for a few months, got into a really toxic dynamic with a coach at the time, and I almost was pushed out. I was pushed out of St. George. Then I traveled to Austin, where I met up with a woman I had met online with the intention of exploring a relationship. And I was in Austin for, I want to say, a month. Then I met my former partner, who I was with for on and off for about a year, moved to Kauai, then to Sedona, a lot of small trips in that time period. That ended in May of last year. Then I was in Colorado for about 6 weeks, and then I was on the Big Island for 3 months. Being in Colorado and being on the Big Island really opened up my eyes and my mind to so many things. I sat with a lot of medicine, and sitting with ayahuasca 3 nights in Hawaii is what I feel like really started the deep work. The last 5 months where I was extremely suicidal, and I was in a mental hospital for 9 days a month ago. And in many, many ways, it feels like my life is just starting. I've been living my life as essentially looking out as a 5-year-old boy who's terrified. I've been scared of everything, but most importantly, or most presently, I've been scared of judgment and of being myself and of my sexuality. And there are many experiences that created that I won't go into. But I was accused of sexual assault, not with the police involved, but the woman I was with told our friend group, and there were a couple other instances of shame. So there's been this disconnect from my body my whole life. And the last few months have been this desire to actually come into my body for the first time ever. And it's been excruciating. It's been terrifying. It's been illuminating. It's been joyful. I've been dancing and playing so much more. And yet there's still so much uncertainty, because in this moment, I have $100 to my name. I did move back to Chicago to stay with my parents in November. After sitting with ayahuasca and living in a community, I felt very, very ungrounded and unsafe. And so I came back here to continue the death process. And there's so much uncertainty now still of okay, starting to connect to my authenticity. What does that look like? How do I make money? How do I be myself? I'm still scared of my sexuality. So there's so much uncertainty still. And it's like another layer is just starting. But the reason that I was inspired to hop on today is because of something that became very clear today that I've gotten a lot of nudges around. And it has to do with gender identity and femininity. I had a reading today with a friend who did an astrology reading, and he brought up how much of my chart is feminine and how much of it is oriented around beauty and tenderness and gentleness and the desire to be witnessed and to be receptive, the feminine. And it was this final thread, or this missing piece that I needed to fully accept something about myself, and that is, I'm not sure if it means that I actually feel like I desire to get trans surgery, but there is a large part of me that desires to be extremely feminine in my expression and to be very sensual and be witnessed in that. And also how much of me loves being tender and soft, and how I just want to hold people and be held and be told it's okay and tell them it's okay. And as a kid, I loved to dance and to dress up as a girl. And when I was sitting with ayahuasca back in September and October, there was a part of the ceremony where I saw myself turning into a woman. And I remember being like, no, 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 no. And I kind of like dissociated or popped out. I was like, nope. And that was one kind of nudge around this feminine energy. Um, I had met with a woman when I was in Sedona, and she was channeling, and she said, "I'm getting that you're a goddess in a god's body." And there have been all these like themes. I was in a coaching container where I was coaching someone who was a trans man. My former partner's child was trans. I've always had a soft spot for people who I would deem to be outcasts or like mistreated in our culture. So like people with autism, or people that are really overweight, or uh, people that are really like physically unattractive, or people that have, I don't know, like Tourette's or something about them. There was actually, when I was in the mental hospital, there was a guy who had this like growth over his eye. Like it was like a big, almost looked cancerous, but it must have been benign over his one eye. And I just felt so much compassion for him, because I can't imagine walking around like that and knowing that people are judging you and looking at you. And to connect all this, I didn't share this before, but a huge part of my life was growing up. I was judged a lot for, it's hard to see maybe in the light, but I was judged a lot for my eyes, because they're very deep, they're very close, they're very small, and people would call me Cyclops a lot. And I just took it. I didn't really know what to say. I remember senior year, I had a math class with one of the cool kids, and I would sit down and he'd be like, "What's up, Cy?" Like it was a nickname, like Cyclops, like Cy. And I've always had this shame, this feeling flawed and broken and too weird, not belonging. And I don't know when it started, but like I said, I've always felt like this 5-year-old boy who looks out at the world and doesn't know how to be, doesn't know how to take care of himself, and just sees fear and judgment. And that was one thing that came up in my ceremony as well, was I saw my inner child, and he was curled up in a ball. He almost looked like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and he was just like, I don't know how to be me in this world. I don't know what to do. It was so fucking heartbreaking. And these last 5 months that I've been back in Chicago has been this odyssey into like, who am I? What do I want? Because I've lived so much of my life in survival of just like hiding and people pleasing and isolating and being scared of everyone and everything and myself. And today, that reading I had connected all these dots around femininity, gender identity, how much of me feels feminine. And I ended up having a beautiful moment with my mom where she actually told me, when I was a child, a woman came up to her and said I was a girl, like very matter of factly, almost like it was a message. And then my mom admitted today, because I opened up to her about what I've been experiencing, about this confusion around gender expression. And she said that she has often wondered if this is part of my path, this like either wanting to be a woman or being uh, not homosexual, because those are different things, who I'm attracted to, and I'm attracted to both genders. isn't the same as what I feel like. But she basically said she wondered if it was part of my path, this very feminine expression and perhaps trans expression. And she volunteers somewhere, and apparently one of the couples that she works with um, has a trans son. And so anyway, it's a huge theme, and I ended up crying with her very recently tonight. And so where I'm at right now is it feels like there's this massive amount of feminine energy that wants to get out, that wants to be seen as beautiful, as graceful, as tender, as soft, and wants to be held, like wants to really be in that feminine. And then there is so much conditioning around owning that. And that has been coupled with this confusion around, what do I do next with my life? Hawaii is calling to me, but how do I get there? Where do I live? I still feel very wounded. You know, can I trust myself? Because when I lived on the island, those are my people. The very flamboyant expression is so accepted there, and that is me. And whether or not, it doesn't even necessarily matter what I end up looking like. It's just this desire to really be in that sensual, like beautiful expression of that feminine. And um, yeah, I'm really scared of who I who I am, and I'm afraid that I'll be alone. I'm afraid that if I continue to look within, which I have a lot the last year or so, I'll find things that continue to terrify me. Like, what if I actually want to get like surgery? Um, it just feels like the way that I desire to live my life is so countercultural, and that scares me. And so in this moment, there is some excitement around actually connecting with the inner child, the inner boy, the inner girl. There's such a desire to connect to magic and curiosity and wonder and awe, and I just want to like grab people and be like, oh my god, life is fucking amazing, like look at this grass, look at everything. Like, that's a big part of my expression. And then there's also, like I said, that like feminine, like very sensual, even like recently I've been really connected to like unicorns and rainbows. And so there's just so much. So I feel like my identity is changing day by day. And I'm like, who the fuck am I? And I seemingly have had this massive resistance to responsibility and wanting to be a child almost. Like, part of me doesn't want to leave this like very comfortable space of like, oh, I'm living with my parents. We get along really well. I'm continuing to explore myself. I'm afraid of the future. I'm afraid of change. And it's a really intense space to be in, because I'm almost 34 years old, and I literally feel, like I've said, in many ways like I'm 5, and I'm just starting to explore who I am. And yeah, and so getting naked with Kai, I'm feeling very vulnerable. Do I desire to be a woman? Do I want to be in that feminine a lot? Do I want to be penetrated? I never have experimented with that. I've been with men, but I've never had sex with men. There's so many questions, and then it's like, where do I go next? Because I do know that being here feels like it's in some ways limiting that full flamboyancy, and yet I don't have the finances, and there's this massive resistance to getting a job. And is that irresponsible? It feels aligned. It really does. I have so much fucking love to give. It's on the call today. We were talking about how my chart shows that I have a high desire to be like a mother figure to people. And I started to sob because like what I want to do to most people is to like hold them and tell them that they're safe and that everything is okay. Because that's what I've never felt. And it's no knock on my parents. My parents are amazing. It's just for whatever reason, some part of me has never felt just held. And today when we were on the call, I realized how much I just wanted to be able to curl up into someone's arms and cry and just grieve and be held and be witnessed. And I've been so afraid of my emotions, so afraid of my expression. And it's this fascinating space that I'm in right now where in some ways I feel completely confused, lost and terrified and trapped. And then there are so many ways that I feel amazing. I feel very healthy. My body feels very healthy. I've been sleeping well. I've been expressing myself creatively in ways that I never did before with like comedy videos and dancing. I feel very purposeful when I wake up in the mornings. I'm very committed to doing things like breath work and meditation and something called bioenergetics, which is like helping remove tension from the body. And that was one of the themes of my reading today, is he said that my chart and my energy contains a lot of paradox, and there are going to be a lot of challenges because of these like tug of wars that are going on inside. And that was fucking validating because my whole life has felt like this giant tug of war. Where I would like to go from here is, number one, I'm calling in a space to be able to continue to ground in and explore my own soul, honestly, like my own creative expression, my embodiment. And it might end up being Hawaii. I've had so many visions of like literally I have a tent just living on the beach for a while and really connecting to this and just maybe dancing and continuing to create and potentially interviewing people for this channel. But a space to like just be my fucking weird ass self, because there's a lot of weirdness inside of me. I just like all the time I just want to like make faces and like all the things as kids that we do naturally, and then we grow up, and as we age we're told it's not okay. And so I look around. I was on the train the other day and I look around and I just see how wounded the inner child is in all of us. And so I want to continue to let mine out. This beautiful boy, this beautiful girl, let them out. And I'm calling in a space to do that. It doesn't feel like being here in Chicago is supportive. And yet, as I've shared, I don't have funds right now to make that happen. I've been doing a few events and been selling some things, and I'm still tuning into how to make that happen. If anyone feels called to support, I would appreciate that very much. That's number one, is calling in a space to explore, whether it's someone who has a property on one of the islands, which would be amazing. Um, Potentially do work trade, or whether it's I just go and take a leap and trust. And then there's a desire to really explore, and this is related to number one, but like to explore the gender dynamics within me, like the part of me that loves rainbows and unicorns and beauty and magic and frolicking, like let that out. And then, hold on, I'm going to fart. Ugh, that is a huge part of my expression that I want to normalize, is like farting and burping. Um, and then one of the things that has been a huge theme is that sexual repression, like being terrified and ashamed of my desires. Like on one hand, feeling incredibly turned on and horny all the time. And then there's this like religious programming, shame from my childhood experiences. And so there's been this dissonance of like, I really want to express it, but it's wrong. And then society says that you're only valuable if you've slept with a lot of women. And I've had 5 partners, 5 female sexual partners that I've had sex with, a few men that I've explored with. But my mind is like, oh, that's not high enough. You're not valuable. And so there's just all these like internal tug of wars going on, which has created all this tension in my body. And my whole life has been this like just tension, 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 tug of war, indecisiveness, unsafety, all the things. And yeah, I want to continue to express myself on TikTok, on here. I'm going to have an interview lined up with a friend for episode 2. And I'll probably hop on and record my own solo episodes from time to time, but it felt, yeah, it finally felt like the right time to share, especially given this like illumination around, am I trans? Do I want to be a woman? Who am I? How do I want to dress? How do I want to act? What's next? And yeah, I feel like I'm all over the place. Today's been an intense emotional day. Um, it's funny. I have some questions here that I want to ask people that I have on. I shared my story up until now. What's my vision? My vision is to cultivate a home base somewhere, and it may be in Hawaii. And then that'll be like my home base. And then to travel around the world expressing myself and my medicine. And I do feel I'm still learning it. At the core, it's my authentic expression. It's my shamelessness about being where I'm at, about my journey. Because I so deeply want people to know there's nothing to be ashamed of. And I want to just hold people, and I want to continue to explore. I've been exploring like I'm really connected to sound healing. I played some crystal bowls the other day at my therapist's office, and so it's continuing to explore that, potentially getting into DJing, but creating these spaces for people that involve like a little bit of comedy and then a dance to like really connect, and then some sound healing. So helping people connect more deeply and have catharsis, probably breath work as well. But all these things are starting to come together, and um, I trust the process. But ultimately, I know that my vision and my medicine is to just be my fucking weird ass self and to connect to the other weirdos around the world and to share my story like I'm doing now, to interview people. Just got like a shiver. Energy moves sometimes, and I just do stuff like this to move it. Um, and just to, to connect to connect to beautiful humans and to be myself. And that's it. That's my mission. And by vibrating at my frequency, allow others to connect to their own frequency as well, and help us all connect to our inner child. Because I do feel that what we all want to do is to laugh and to play, and I'm getting the chills. To laugh, to play, to experience magic, to experience deep love and pleasure and peace, and let ourselves be ourselves, all of our fucking weird ass self. That's my vision, and to cultivate some way to travel and help people connect to that through my travels, through my expression, and having a home base where I can go back to reset, to feel safe again if I need to, whatever that may be. Living potentially with a few people that I really love, maybe sharing that community space if I'm gone. So yeah, I just want to continue to figure out how to be myself in this world and help others be themselves. That's the core of it. And find a way to take care of my material needs while continuing this process. Yeah, the last thing that I'll share is I've had this vision that has kind of scared me of like growing my hair really long and dyeing it like red for whatever reason, getting my tongue pierced, and then having 2 sleeve tattoos, just like all these images of self-expression. And I've gotten this image in ceremony before, that my highest desire and my mission is to be a peacock for God. So be willing to be seen, to think differently, to act differently, to behave differently, to move differently, to express differently, in the interest of, one, feeling fulfilled, because I feel the most fulfilled when I'm fully allowing myself to express in each moment, and then also to inspire other people. And yeah, so this was getting naked with Kai. I'd love to read some comments around the part that's most resonant for me right now, that I'd love to connect with people on, is around gender identity, gender fluidity, uh, yeah, and just I'd love to hear from people who are perhaps experiencing the same thing and are confused and scared and feel alone. And yeah, anyways, thank y'all for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.